Imagine growing up surrounded by everything money can buy: a luxurious home, an excellent education, and parents who, in your eyes, seem almost immortal. This is Bernardo's world, a young boy who appeared to have his future perfectly planned. But life, unpredictable as always, had a surprise in store that would forever change this boy's trajectory. In an instant, everything Bernardo knew is turned upside down, forcing him to face challenges he never imagined. A devastating accident, an unexpected hero, and a journey of self-discovery begin to carve out a new path for Bernardo, one filled with uncertainties but also with opportunities to turn pain into something extraordinary. In this story of twists and courage, follow Bernardo as he navigates a world that goes far beyond comfort and wealth. Discover how a simple act of bravery can spark a chain of kindness and hope, changing lives in unimaginable ways. This is not just a story of overcoming adversity, but of how life, even in its darkest moments, can show us the true meaning of altruism and redemption. Bernardo had always been a lucky boy. At just 10 years old, his world was a modern-day fairy tale, filled with all the luxuries wealth could provide. His family's large apartment occupied the top floor of one of the tallest buildings in the city and offered a breathtaking panoramic view. The exquisite decor reflected the refined taste of Bernardo's parents, successful businesspeople whose companies had dominated business news in recent years. The atmosphere was always vibrant, with staff ensuring that every need of young Bernardo was promptly met. To Bernardo, his parents, Miriam and Pablo, were immortal. They were not only known for their influence in the business world but also for their dedication to ensuring that Bernardo had the best life had to offer. He often saw his parents in business meetings, always elegantly dressed and exuding an aura of competence and power. Despite this, Miriam and Pablo had a clear philosophy when it came to Bernardo's education and upbringing. They wanted him to understand the importance of hard work and dedication. To ensure that Bernardo had a bright future and that his values were upheld, his parents opened a special bank account exclusively for his education. This account held a considerable sum, intended to cover all the costs of attending a prestigious university abroad. The intention was clear: to prepare Bernardo for success and self-discipline without letting the weight of fortune make him lazy and complacent. In turn, Bernardo lived a carefully planned routine, full of activities that stimulated both his mind and body. Mornings began with private math and science lessons, followed by violin and swimming sessions. Every aspect of his life was meticulously organized to ensure that he was always on the path to excellence. Yet, behind the facade of success and discipline, Bernardo was just a child enjoying the luxuries of his life, unconcerned with the complexities of the future, surrounded by adults who praised his accomplishments and precocious intelligence. Weekends were filled with trips to museums, theaters, and social events, where Bernardo was often the center of attention. He grew up believing that life would continue to be a series of perfect moments, with no major surprises or detours. However, life has a curious way of throwing unexpected challenges in everyone's path, no matter how well-planned the future may be. What Bernardo didn't know was that an unforeseen event would turn his world upside down, forcing him to face reality in a way he had never imagined. Though still shrouded in mystery, this event was about to change the course of his life, revealing that even in a world of comfort and wealth, life can be unpredictable and challenging. On a summer afternoon, Bernardo was in the mansion's vast garden, running after a colorful kite that danced in the wind. The laughter of his friends echoed through the space, mingling with the sound of birds and the gentle murmur of the fountains that adorned the area. Life seemed like a series of perfect moments, and Bernardo had no reason to believe that anything could disturb the harmony of his world. He paused for a moment to grab a refreshing drink that the housekeeper, Mrs. Giordano, had brought. "Are you having fun, Bernardo?" the woman asked with a gentle smile. Yes, a lot, Bernardo replied, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Look how high my kite is flying. Mrs. Giordano smiled and nodded, delighted to see Bernardo so happy. But in that idyllic moment, an unexpected shadow cast itself over the lightness of the day. Pablo Rossi entered the garden with an expression Bernardo had never seen before, a mix of seriousness and concern. Miriam followed closely behind, wearing the same grave expression. Bernardo's face paled as he noticed the sudden change in the atmosphere. Bernardo, come here for a moment, Pablo said, his voice heavy with a tone that immediately made the boy understand something was wrong. Bernardo dropped the kite string and ran to his parents, his heart pounding faster. What happened? He asked, looking from one to the other, feeling the tense atmosphere that had settled in. Miriam knelt to be at Bernardo's eye level and took his hands in hers. An emergency has come up, and we'll be traveling out of the country in the next few days. One of our major clients scheduled a last-minute meeting. We need to discuss the rules for this time. Mrs. Giordano will be taking care of you. Upon hearing this, Bernardo's face filled with uncertainty. He looked from his mother to his father, unsure of what to expect. The afternoons of fun and the promises of a bright future were being interrupted by something he couldn't understand. And so, without knowing what awaited him, Bernardo prepared to face a change that would challenge all his certainties and expectations. The next morning, the sun was still low when Bruno, the family's driver, began his day as usual. He had a well-established routine. The morning started early, with the sound of the alarm clock echoing in the small apartment Bruno kept near the Rossi mansion. He quickly dressed, prepared a quick coffee, and headed to his vehicle, a sleek black SUV that gleamed in the morning sun. His job was demanding and full of details, but Bruno was accustomed to the fast pace. From the Rossi company to the various appointments of the family members, each day was a complex choreography of schedules and destinations. Upon arriving at the mansion, he found Pablo and Miriam Rossi ready to leave. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Rossi, Bruno said with a professional smile. How are you today? Good morning, Bruno, Miriam replied, adjusting her seatbelt. We're headed to the office as usual. This week is busy, because we'll be traveling out of the country later this week. I hope the traffic is smooth in the coming days. Pablo got into the car and looked at Bruno with a worried expression. When you return, make sure Bernardo is ready for school. He has an extra French class right after lunch and then a judo lesson. Understood, Mr. Rossi? Bruno confirmed, adjusting the rearview mirror. I'll take care of everything. The traffic was as expected, and soon after, Pablo and Miriam were dropped off in front of the company's office. Bruno bid the couple farewell with a slight nod and began his journey back. The rest of the morning passed without major incidents. Bruno made his way to the school, where Bernardo, with his backpack full of books and an excited expression, got into the car. Hi, Bruno. Today I have French class and then I'm going to judo. Can you take me straight there? Of course, Bernardo. We'll go to the French school first and then to judo, Bruno replied, starting the engine and following the route. Hours later, the afternoon seemed calm, with Bruno moving from one appointment to the next as planned. However, in the early evening, an unforeseen event began to unfold. Pablo Rossi called Bruno with urgency in his voice. Bruno, we've had a change of plans. We need to go to the airport to catch a last-minute flight. Our flight, which was supposed to be in 3 days, has been rescheduled for tonight. Miriam and I are already waiting. Can you rearrange Bernardo's other appointments and pick us up here after dropping him off at home? Bruno felt a twinge of stress, but replied calmly, Understood, Mr. Rossi. I'll adjust the schedule and make sure everything is taken care of. With the sudden change, Bruno had to act quickly. First, he needed to reorganize Bernardo's itinerary, who was in French class and had a martial arts lesson scheduled for later. The rush hour traffic was also a concerning factor. After coordinating with the school and the academy, Bruno adjusted the timings and headed for Bernardo's next activity. The sun was setting when Bruno completed the last task of the day and dropped Bernardo off at home. Then, he made his way to the Rossi office, passing through the city lights and navigating the chaotic traffic that seemed never-ending. Despite the complications, he was determined to fulfill all his duties and ensure that Mr. and Mrs. Rossi found everything in order when they arrived. When he arrived, Bruno saw Pablo and Miriam waiting. "Here you are, Mr. and Mrs. Rossi," he said, relieved to have completed all the commitments. "Everything is in order, and the schedules were adjusted as needed." Pablo took a deep breath and smiled, though a slight tension was still visible. "Thank you, Bruno. Sorry for the last-minute hassle. We appreciate you keeping everything under control. Now let's head to the airport, because we're almost late." With his well-known driving skill, Bruno sped through the city streets, weaving through traffic to ensure his employers didn't miss their flight. 45 minutes later, he dropped off Pablo and Miriam at the airport in time to catch their flight. "Thank you, Bruno. I don't know what we'd do without you," Pablo said. "No problem," Bruno replied. "I'm happy to help. Have a good flight." With that, Pablo and Miriam headed for check-in, and Bruno stayed in the vehicle, feeling exhausted but satisfied for having managed the unexpected situation. As he drove back to the mansion, he reflected on how a seemingly ordinary day could quickly turn into a test of skills. The next morning, the sun rose timidly, with scattered clouds hinting at a cloudy day. Bruno was behind the wheel, his eyes heavy with fatigue. The previous night had been a test of his endurance. After taking Bernardo to his French and judo classes, he had hurried to pick up Mr. Rossi from the airport and finally returned home after a long day. Sleeping for only a few hours and starting the next day early was proving more difficult than usual. Unaware of Bruno's lack of sleep, Bernardo was excited for another day of school. He chatted about what he had learned in French class and the new judo moves he hoped to master. Bruno tried to keep up with the conversation, but his mind was bogged down with thoughts of the chaotic day he had and what was yet to come. "Bruno, did you hear what I said?" Bernardo asked, a bit worried as he noticed the driver's distant look. "Sorry, Bernardo. I'm just a little tired today," Bruno replied, trying to hide his discomfort. "What were you saying about the new moves?" Before Bernardo could respond, Bruno made a sharp left turn. His fatigue and lack of attention had diminished his perception of the turn, which was sharper than he had anticipated, and the vehicle didn't slow down in time. The sudden turn caused the car to skid, and in an instant, the front right wheel crashed into a pile of construction debris accumulated on the sidewalk. The impact was brutal. The car jolted, and Bruno felt the steering wheel shake violently in his hands. The sound of crumpling metal and debris scattering on the ground was followed by a deafening noise. The black SUV stabilized with a jolt, but something was clearly wrong. "Bruno!" Bernardo screamed, panic etched on his face. "Are you okay?" Bruno tried to stay calm, his mind struggling to focus as adrenaline took over his body. He quickly assessed the car and then noticed the unmistakable smell of gasoline. The fuel tank was damaged, and a dangerous leak was beginning to form. "Bernardo, stay calm," Bruno said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We've had a minor accident, but I'm fine. I need to check what's happening with the car." He turned the ignition to the off position, but the car was immobilized. Looking out the window, he saw debris scattered around the vehicle and gasoline starting to pool on the ground. At that moment, Bruno realized the car had flipped, and they were upside down. The smell of fuel intensified by the second, and Bruno knew he needed to act quickly. "Bernardo, I need you to stay in the car and move away from the area where the gasoline is leaking," Bruno instructed, trying to be as calm as possible. "I'm going to check what we can do to get out of here." He tried to open the driver's door, but it was jammed due to the impact. Bruno quickly assessed his options and then turned to Bernardo. "Let's try to get out through the passenger door. It might be easier." With Bernardo's help, who was now quite alarmed, Bruno tried to force the passenger door open, but was unsuccessful. Both were trapped in the vehicle, even more anxious about the pooling gasoline. The smell of fuel grew stronger, mingling with the scent of burnt metal and rubber. The damaged tank was leaking a pool of fuel that slowly spread across the ground. The sun, which had seemed gentle before, now felt harsh, heating the flammable liquid and increasing the risk of an imminent explosion. Suddenly, the fire began to manifest with small points of flame that quickly grew and spread across the vehicle. The flames licked the body of the car, and thick smoke rose into the sky, visible from hundreds of meters away. The crackling sound of the flames and the popping of boiling fuel were almost deafening. The few pedestrians passing by, many of them waiting at a nearby bus stop, were in shock. When the fire began, screams and panic quickly spread. Some people tried to call emergency services, their voices trembling as they explained the desperate situation. "It's on fire! The car is on fire!" shouted a woman, her voice full of terror. She tried to calm her young children, who were crying and clinging to her. Another man, apparently trying to help, approached with a fire extinguisher he had grabbed from his own car. With trembling hands, he aimed the extinguisher at the flames, but the gas pressure was not enough to contain the fire's advance. The sparks and heat forced him to retreat, frustrated. Meanwhile, the panic was becoming almost palpable. Some people began to run away, while others simply watched, paralyzed with fear, unable to move or help. A small group of bystanders tried to stay calm and provide information to the authorities who were on their way. The first firefighters arrived shortly after, with sirens cutting through the air and bringing a sense of relief mixed with apprehension. They quickly established a safety perimeter, pushing back onlookers and beginning to work on controlling the fire. As the fire consumed the car and the firefighters worked frantically to control the flames, an unexpected figure emerged from the terrified onlookers. The woman, whose disheveled appearance starkly contrasted with the chaotic situation around her, stepped forward. Her tattered hood covered much of her face, but her determined eyes and expression of pure courage were visible. With her dirty, ragged jacket, she seemed out of place among the panicked crowd. Yet, her presence was like a ray of hope amid the chaos. Without hesitation, she headed toward the burning car with surprising speed. The crowd, partly scared and partly fascinated, watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Kid, get down," the woman shouted, her voice firm and urgent. Bernardo, initially paralyzed with fear, quickly responded, ducking in the passenger seat. In her hands, she held a piece of pipe, apparently found among the debris. With unexpected strength, she swung the pipe and struck the car window with a single precise blow. The glass shattered into fragments that fell onto the asphalt, and the sound of the break was immediately drowned out by the roar of the flames and the growing panic. The woman squeezed through the opening of the broken window, her dirty, calloused hands gripping the interior of the car. She quickly located Bernardo, now cramped and cowering, and with an agile movement, she pulled him out. The boy, initially confused and terrified, let out a cry of surprise as he felt the woman's strength but immediately felt relief at the possibility of escaping the danger. The woman's bravery knew no bounds. Even as her jacket began to catch fire, her actions were unwavering. She fought against the flames, ignoring the pain and intense heat, and managed to drag Bernardo to safety, away from the car. When she finally pulled him far enough away, her jacket was still on fire, but she didn't seem to care about that, only about saving the boy. The woman continued to drag him away from the burning vehicle. The intensity of the fire and the heat wave were brutal, and the woman struggled to keep going as the fire began to burn her body. She quickly started shaking and beating with her hands, trying to extinguish the flames that consumed her clothing. After the flames on her jacket were extinguished, the woman immediately positioned herself over the boy, covering him with her body in a desperate attempt to protect him from the fire consuming the car. The heat was almost unbearable, and sparks danced around them. She used her own body as a shield, wrapping Bernardo in her arms and the weight of her body, hoping to protect him from the intense flames and scorching heat. At that moment, the tension in the air was palpable. The car, now completely engulfed in flames, seemed on the verge of exploding at any moment. Then, the inevitable happened. 3 seconds later, a deafening roar erupted from the car. The fuel tank, saturated with the flammable liquid, exploded with devastating force. The explosion was so violent that it threw Bernardo and the woman away from the car in a wave of heat and debris. The ground shook with the impact, and the pressure and flames shot even higher into the air. Bernardo and the woman were hurled onto the asphalt, rolling several meters before stopping. The scene around them was absolute chaos. Thick smoke enveloped the area, making it difficult to see, while the sound of the fire mixed with the noise of sirens and screams. The woman, visibly struggling and in pain, was clearly exhausted and injured, but the fact that she had managed to save the boy was a testament to her determination. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived at the scene, its lights flashing and sirens piercing the air. The medical team, with an expression of urgency and professionalism, quickly moved to where Bernardo and the woman were lying. One of the paramedics, seeing Bernardo, immediately began assessing his condition. The boy was frightened and had some burns, but he was conscious and seemed relieved to see help arrive. "We're taking him to the hospital now," the paramedic said, as he carefully placed Bernardo on the stretcher and prepared him for transport. As the ambulance was getting ready to leave, the paramedics also quickly moved to assist the woman. One of the firefighters, with an admiring look, offered immediate help. "Are you okay, ma'am? We need to get you medical attention." The woman, now sitting on the ground, looked exhausted and burned, but her gaze remained steady. "He needed help. I couldn't leave him in there," she said. Bernardo, still trembling, looked at the woman with a mix of gratitude and shock. "Thank you. Thank you for saving me," he managed to murmur, his eyes filled with tears. Suddenly, the fire began to manifest with small points of flame that quickly grew and spread across the vehicle. The flames licked the body of the car, and thick smoke rose into the sky, visible from hundreds of meters away. The crackling sound of the flames and the popping of boiling fuel were almost deafening. The few pedestrians passing by, many of them waiting at a nearby bus stop, were in shock. When the fire began, screams and panic quickly spread. Some people tried to call emergency services, their voices trembling as they explained the desperate situation. "It's on fire. The car is on fire," shouted a woman, her voice full of terror. She tried to calm her young children, who were crying and clinging to her. Another man, apparently trying to help, approached with a fire extinguisher he had grabbed from his own car. With trembling hands, he aimed the extinguisher at the flames, but the gas pressure was not enough to contain the fire's advance. The sparks and heat forced him to retreat, frustrated. Meanwhile, the panic was becoming almost palpable. Some people began to run away, while others simply watched, paralyzed with fear, unable to move or help. A small group of bystanders tried to stay calm and provide information to the authorities who were on their way. The first firefighters arrived shortly after, with sirens cutting through the air and bringing a sense of relief mixed with apprehension. They quickly established a safety perimeter, pushing back onlookers and beginning to work on controlling the fire. As the fire consumed the car and the firefighters worked frantically to control the flames, an unexpected figure emerged from the terrified onlookers. The woman, whose disheveled appearance starkly contrasted with the chaotic situation around her, stepped forward. Her tattered hood covered much of her face, but her determined eyes and expression of pure courage were visible. With her dirty, ragged jacket, she seemed out of place among the panicked crowd. Yet, her presence was like a ray of hope amid the chaos. Without hesitation, she headed toward the burning car with surprising speed. The crowd, partly scared and partly fascinated, watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Kid, get down," the woman shouted, her voice firm and urgent. Bernardo, initially paralyzed with fear, quickly responded, ducking in the passenger seat. In her hands, she held a piece of pipe, apparently found among the debris. With unexpected strength, she swung the pipe and struck the car window with a single precise blow. The glass shattered into fragments that fell onto the asphalt, and the sound of the break was immediately drowned out by the roar of the flames and the growing panic. The woman squeezed through the opening of the broken window, her dirty, calloused hands gripping the interior of the car. She quickly located Bernardo, now cramped and cowering, and with an agile movement, she pulled him out. The boy, initially confused and terrified, let out a cry of surprise as he felt the woman's strength but immediately felt relief at the possibility of escaping the danger. The woman's bravery knew no bounds. Even as her jacket began to catch fire, her actions were unwavering. She fought against the flames, ignoring the pain and intense heat, and managed to drag Bernardo to safety, away from the car. When she finally pulled him far enough away, her jacket was still on fire, but she didn't seem to care about that, only about saving the boy. The woman continued to drag him away from the burning vehicle. The intensity of the fire and the heat wave were brutal, and the woman struggled to keep going as the fire began to burn her body. She quickly started shaking and beating with her hands, trying to extinguish the flames that consumed her clothing. After the flames on her jacket were extinguished, the woman immediately positioned herself over the boy, covering him with her body in a desperate attempt to protect him from the fire consuming the car. The heat was almost unbearable, and sparks danced around them. She used her own body as a shield, wrapping Bernardo in her arms and the weight of her body, hoping to protect him from the intense flames and scorching heat. At that moment, the tension in the air was palpable. The car, now completely engulfed in flames, seemed on the verge of exploding at any moment. Then, the inevitable happened. 3 seconds later, a deafening roar erupted from the car. The fuel tank, saturated with the flammable liquid, exploded with devastating force. The explosion was so violent that it threw Bernardo and the woman away from the car in a wave of heat and debris. The ground shook with the impact, and the pressure and flames shot even higher into the air. Bernardo and the woman were hurled onto the asphalt, rolling several meters before stopping. The scene around them was absolute chaos. Thick smoke enveloped the area, making it difficult to see, while the sound of the fire mixed with the noise of sirens and screams. The woman, visibly struggling and in pain, was clearly exhausted and injured, but the fact that she had managed to save the boy was a testament to her determination. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived at the scene, its lights flashing and sirens piercing the air. The medical team, with an expression of urgency and professionalism, quickly moved to where Bernardo and the woman were lying. One of the paramedics, seeing Bernardo, immediately began assessing his condition. The boy was frightened and had some burns, but he was conscious and seemed relieved to see help arrive. "We're taking him to the hospital now," the paramedic said, as he carefully placed Bernardo on the stretcher and prepared him for transport. As the ambulance was getting ready to leave, the paramedics also quickly moved to assist the woman. One of the firefighters, with an admiring look, offered immediate help. "Are you okay, ma'am? We need to get you medical attention." The woman, now sitting on the ground, looked exhausted and burned, but her gaze remained steady. "He needed help. I couldn't leave him in there," she said. Bernardo, still trembling, looked at the woman with a mix of gratitude and shock. "Thank you. Thank you for saving me," he managed to murmur, his eyes filled with tears. Determined to turn this lesson into action, Bernardo looked for ways to channel his desire to help. After careful research and conversations with his parents and advisors, he joined a local volunteer organization. The decision was not just a choice of commitment, but a reflection of Bernardo's deep desire to do good and give back to the community. From the beginning of his involvement with the organization, Bernardo's dedication was visible to everyone around him. He engaged in a variety of activities, from distributing food and clothing to the homeless to assisting in shelters for the sick and community centers. Bernardo not only carried out his tasks efficiently, but also brought genuine joy and contagious enthusiasm to every project he was involved in. His enthusiasm was palpable when he talked with the people he helped, and his commitment to volunteer work was admired by colleagues and members of the organization. He treated each interaction with a warm smile and a willingness to listen, offering valuable emotional support. Bernardo's Saturdays, once a routine of rest, were now filled with volunteer activities. He devoted himself to the work with dedication, always looking for ways to do more and positively impact the lives of the people he met. His parents watched with pride as their son grew and developed, seeing how his desire to do good had shaped his life in a meaningful way. Bernardo's moments of satisfaction came not only from the tasks completed but from knowing that he was making a real difference. He felt a deep connection with the people he helped and found a renewed purpose in his life. The pain of loss and the gratitude for the bravery of the woman who saved him had turned into a passion for helping the less fortunate, a living legacy of the impact those experiences had on his life. Although the identity of the heroic woman remained a mystery, Bernardo kept her memory alive in his heart, inspiring him to be the change he wanted to see in the world. The desire to honor Bruno's memory and the gratitude for the help received were the driving forces behind his volunteer work. For Bernardo, the accident had become a driving force that shaped his life in a way that radiated kindness and empathy to those who needed it most. Over the years, Bernardo not only continued his volunteer work, but also expanded his vision to create something that could offer an even greater impact. At 25, he founded his own charity organization, a project born from a combination of his past experiences and a burning desire to make a difference in people's lives. The creation of the organization was a significant milestone in his journey, symbolizing the realization of a dream fueled by years of dedication and altruism. Founding the organization was a challenge, but Bernardo was determined. He invested time and effort in planning every detail, from fundraising to structuring the services offered. The first task was to find partners and collaborators who shared his vision. He organized fundraising events and presented his project to businesspeople and philanthropists, successfully attracting significant contributions that enabled the operation to begin. The new organization, named Instituto Luz, was designed to be a comprehensive support and assistance center for those in vulnerable situations. Bernardo and his team inaugurated the center with a simple but meaningful ceremony. The space included a range of essential services to meet the basic and emotional needs of those served. The organization's dining hall, always full of life, offered nutritious and balanced meals for those struggling with hunger. Bernardo knew that food was not only physical sustenance, but also a gesture of care and respect. He ensured that the dining hall staff consisted of people who treated each beneficiary with dignity and attention. The medical center provided basic and urgent medical care for those without access to healthcare services. With the help of volunteer doctors and local partners, the center became a fundamental pillar in the community. In addition, Bernardo implemented dental and psychological treatment services, understanding that mental and physical health were equally important for overall well-being. Another innovative service offered by the organization was the free barbershop and manicure services. Bernardo believed that personal care had a profound impact on people's self-esteem and confidence. The space was welcoming, and the professionals, always attentive and kind, offered their services with a smile, providing a bit of dignity and comfort to those going through difficult times. Thus, the organization's impact was quickly noticed by everyone. Testimonials from people whose lives had been transformed began to pour in, and Bernardo's satisfaction was palpable. He saw the reflection of his work in the smiles and gratitude of the beneficiaries. The hard work and vision he had nurtured over the years were finally coming to fruition, and the mission of Instituto Luz was fulfilling its purpose. For Bernardo, personal fulfillment came not only from the organization's success, but also from the feeling that he was fulfilling a greater purpose. He constantly remembered the woman who saved him and the inspiration he received from that act of bravery. Instituto Luz was, in many ways, a tribute to the impact those moments had on his life. Bernardo's mission was to bring a little light and hope to those who needed it most, and he was determined to ensure that his organization continued to do so effectively and lovingly. Every aspect of Bernardo's work was dedicated with contagious enthusiasm, knowing that despite the challenges, he was making a real difference in people's lives. On a typical day at Instituto Luz, Bernardo was supervising the kitchen, where volunteers were preparing meals for those in need. The space was filled with a welcoming aroma of simmering soup and freshly baked bread, a comforting contrast to the coldness of the day outside the doors. As he walked among the workstations, Bernardo noticed a figure that seemed out of place in the vibrant kitchen environment. A thin, hunched woman stood near the entrance, clutching a tattered hat in her hands. Her presence was discreet, but something about the way she stood and the hesitant expression on her face caught his attention. Bernardo soon noticed the burn scar covering half of her face, a mark that seemed to tell a story of pain and survival. With his usual concern for visitors, Bernardo approached the woman with a gentle smile. "Hello, can I help you with something?" he asked, noticing the scars that stood out against her pale skin. The woman raised her head and looked at Bernardo with tired but kind eyes. "No, it's not necessary. I'd just like a hot bowl of soup and 2 slices of bread, if possible," she replied in a low, calm voice. "The scar doesn't bother me anymore," she added, in a tone that sought to reassure Bernardo more than herself. With a growing sense of empathy, Bernardo wanted to understand more about the woman and the origin of her scars. "If it's not too intrusive, were you hurt in an accident or was it a crime?" he asked, with genuine curiosity mixed with sincere concern. The woman shook her head, her expression softening as she spoke. "No, it wasn't a crime. Many years ago, I witnessed a terrible accident. It was a car on fire. I saw a boy trapped inside, and something inside me couldn't stay still. I knew I had to do something, even if it meant putting my own life at risk." Bernardo froze for a moment. His heart raced as the impact of her words began to sink in. The story sounded strangely familiar, and a chill ran down his spine. You were there? You were the one who..." Bernardo began, his voice faltering as he tried to connect the dots. The woman looked at him with an understanding expression, and her eyes revealed a mix of pain and peace. Yes, many people remember that episode. I was the one who managed to get that boy out of the burning car, but I couldn't do anything else. I don't know what happened to him after that. The world around Bernardo stopped for a moment. He was standing before the woman who had saved his life years ago. The discovery was overwhelming, and his emotions swirled in a whirlwind of gratitude, surprise, and a deep sense of connection. The memory of that heroic figure who had disappeared without a trace was now standing before him in the flesh. "I'm that boy," Bernardo finally managed to say, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm the boy you saved. I can't express how grateful I am for everything you did for me." The woman's eyes filled with tears, and a serene smile formed on her face. "I didn't know what had happened to you. Knowing that you're okay and that you've done something so meaningful with your life is more than I could have imagined." After the conversation, Bernardo gently led her to the dining area, where he personally prepared the bowl of soup and bread she had requested. As Bernardo and the woman sat in the organization's dining area, the atmosphere around them seemed to absorb the emotional weight of their conversation. The bowl of soup and bread that Bernardo had prepared were placed on the table, but the food became secondary to the deeply meaningful dialogue that unfolded. The woman began to speak again, her words laden with raw sincerity. I need to tell you more about what happened after that day," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "After the accident, I knew I had to leave as quickly as possible. I was so scared of being identified or getting caught by the police." Bernardo listened intently, his heart tightening as the woman continued. "At that time, I was involved in criminal activities," she explained. "It was a complicated period in my life. I didn't want my presence at the scene to be linked to legal problems that could further complicate my situation." Bernardo was shocked by the revelation but remained attentive. The woman continued, her expression a mixture of relief and sadness. "I tried my best to find out which hospital you had been taken to. I wanted to know if you were okay. When I finally learned that you were safe and that your life was not in danger, I felt relieved, but I also knew I had to move on. I couldn't allow myself to stay connected to the situation." The woman's words deeply moved Bernardo, and emotion overcame him. The connection to his own story was palpable, and tears began to stream down his face. He recognized in the woman not only the heroine who had saved him, but also a person who had fought her own battles and did what she could to ensure his safety. Moved by the woman's sincerity and the weight of her story, Bernardo leaned forward, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "I don't have words to express how grateful I am to you. You saved my life, and the way you cared about my safety, even over your own difficulties, is something I will never forget," he said, pausing briefly. "I want to help you now. Please, accept this money so you can have a better life off the streets." Bernardo took out an envelope with a considerable amount of money from his pocket and handed it to the woman, hoping she would accept the offer. It was a sincere attempt to repay the generosity and courage she had shown years ago. The woman looked at the envelope, then at Bernardo, and shook her head with a sad, resigned smile. "I deeply appreciate your offer and your kindness," she said, her voice full of emotion. "But I'm already used to living on the streets. It's the life I know now. I truly appreciate your concern and your desire to help, but my choice is to move forward in the way I can." Bernardo felt a mix of frustration and admiration. He understood that while he wanted to change the woman's situation, she was firm in her decision. Her determination and acceptance of her condition were a reflection of the inner strength she possessed. "I understand," Bernardo said softly. "I just want you to know that what you did for me was extraordinary, and my gratitude for that will never fade. If you ever change your mind, my door will always be open." The woman smiled, and Bernardo's eyes met hers in a moment of deep connection and understanding. The conversation, though charged with emotions, brought a sense of closure and peace to both of them. The woman's bravery and Bernardo's recognition created a special bond between them, marking a high point in their journey. As the woman was about to leave, she looked at Bernardo with a look of satisfaction and gratitude. "I'm not alone in my struggle," she said with a warm smile. "And you're not alone in your journey either." Bernardo watched as she walked away, feeling a profound gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. The woman's unexpected visit not only brought a sense of closure but also strengthened his commitment to his mission. With her, Bernardo had found the connection and motivation to continue his work, knowing that through his dedication and the impact of others' actions, the cycle of kindness and hope would continue to expand. As the woman walked away from the dining area, Bernardo watched with a mix of sadness and determination. Her words and the acknowledgement of her bravery had touched him deeply. He knew that while he couldn't change the past, there was still a way to make a difference in the present. Unable to hold back any longer, Bernardo ran after her. "Wait!" Bernardo called out, his voice filled with urgency and hope. The woman turned, and her curious gaze met Bernardo's. As he approached, she seemed slightly surprised but also hopeful. Bernardo stopped in front of her, taking a deep breath to gather his words. "Sorry, I just wanted to say that I'm deeply moved by your story and what you did for me." He paused, searching for the right words to express his proposal. "I know you didn't accept the money, and I understand your reasons, but I want to offer something different. Instead of payment, I'd like to offer you a job and housing here at Instituto Luz. I want to ensure you have shelter, hot meals, and dignified work. You'll be an important part of the team and receive a fair salary. I believe this can provide you with a new purpose and a new family." Her face lit up with a mix of surprise and joy. Her eyes shone with a glimmer of hope that Bernardo hadn't seen before. Bernardo's proposal seemed to touch a deep place within her, and the emotion was visible on her face. I don't know what to say," the woman began, her voice trembling with gratitude. "This means so much to me. I never imagined I would receive an opportunity like this. I'm deeply thankful, Bernardo. I accept, with joy." Relief and satisfaction flooded Bernardo. He felt a wave of happiness for having been able to offer an opportunity that could transform her life and, at the same time, integrate someone so courageous and resilient into his team. "Great! I'm so happy you accepted. We'll start with some basic training, and then you'll integrate into our team. I'm sure you'll make a great difference here, just as you did in my life." The woman smiled broadly, and Bernardo felt that he had found a meaningful way to repay the woman who had saved his life. They talked a bit more about the job details and how she would start working at the organization. Bernardo guided her back inside the charity's headquarters, where the team members were eager to meet her. Before entering, Bernardo remembered something important. "Oh, I almost forgot. I never knew your name." The woman looked at him with a caring smile. "My name is Simone." "Nice to meet you, Simone," Bernardo said, extending his hand. "Welcome to the team." Simone shook Bernardo's hand in a grateful gesture. It symbolized not only a new job opportunity but also the formation of a new bond. Bernardo's decision to help Simone in a more substantial way brought him a deep sense of personal fulfillment, completing a cycle that began with an act of bravery years ago. In the following weeks, Simone began working at the charity organization Instituto Luz and quickly became a beloved figure among the team. From the start, Simone's adaptation to the new environment was remarkable. She showed an admirable willingness to collaborate, learn, and integrate. Her skills and past experiences aligned well with the organization's needs, and she soon stood out as a valuable contributor. The new job brought Simone a profound sense of belonging and a feeling of family that she had never experienced before. The Instituto Luz team welcomed Simone with open arms, offering support and friendship that helped her feel integrated and welcomed. The staff and volunteers, upon learning of her story of courage and sacrifice, began to see her as a true source of inspiration. Thus, Simone enthusiastically engaged in various areas of the organization. She started by helping in the kitchen, preparing meals with special care that reflected her own appreciation for a good hot meal. Her colleagues noticed the dedication and attention to detail that she put into every dish, and Simone soon became a favorite among the dining hall beneficiaries. Her gentle smile and welcoming demeanor brought a touch of warmth and humanity to the environment. In addition to her role in the kitchen, Simone also began collaborating with the psychological support team, where her own life experience allowed her to offer a unique and empathetic perspective. She became a source of strength and comfort for many who sought help and guidance. The fact that Simone had overcome difficulties and obstacles made her words and actions even more impactful and effective. The team felt deeply grateful to have someone with such an impressive story, someone who truly understood the value of helping others and who was wholeheartedly dedicated to the organization's mission. Simone not only contributed with her practical skills, but also brought a positive energy and an attitude of gratitude that filled the work environment. For Bernardo, seeing Simone thrive and feel fulfilled was a great source of joy. He closely followed her integration and development and was impressed with how she adapted and became a vital part of the team. Simone wasn't just a dedicated employee, she was someone who had found a new purpose in her life. Her presence helped strengthen the bonds between team members and reinforce the mission of Instituto Luz. For her part, Simone found a new reason to keep going and finally felt at peace and fulfilled. The opportunity to work at the organization provided her with security and a dignified livelihood, and she felt valued. The sense of belonging was an invaluable reward for the courage and sacrifice she had demonstrated years ago. With each passing day, Simone felt more connected to her new family and more confident in her role. She knew that by helping others, she was finding true fulfillment and satisfaction. The cycle of kindness and help, initiated by an act of bravery, had come full circle, bringing light and hope to all involved. One afternoon, realizing that his dream had transformed into a successful charity organization, Bernardo felt that his journey had been completed in a meaningful way. He understood that by investing in kindness and altruism, he had not only found a new purpose for himself, but also helped build a legacy of hope and support for those who needed it most. In the years that followed the reunion, Instituto Luz flourished under Bernardo's leadership. The organization continued to expand and provide essential services to an increasingly wide community. Over time, the facilities were expanded, and new programs were implemented to address the diverse needs of the vulnerable population. Bernardo's vision of creating a space where everyone could find support and dignity became a vibrant reality, with every aspect of the organization reflecting his commitment to positive change. Bernardo and Simone's story is a testament to the profound impact that acts of courage and kindness can have. The fact that the accident, initially a devastating event, led to the formation of such a significant and transformative bond illustrates how life can intertwine in unexpected ways. Simone's brave act of rescuing Bernardo that fateful day was repaid in a way that neither she nor Bernardo could have predicted, creating a chain of kindness that benefited many people. Thus, Bernardo and Simone's story is a powerful example of how tragic events can trigger significant and inspiring changes. Bernardo's life was transformed by the accident and his encounter with Simone, and at the same time, Simone's life was revitalized by the opportunity to start anew and contribute to the well-being of others. Bernardo's work at Instituto Luz and Simone's contribution highlighted how kindness and love can generate lasting and transformative effects. I hope you enjoyed this story full of twists and emotions. If you liked it and want more exciting narratives like this, don't forget to give it a like, activate the Tinkerbell, and subscribe to the Stories Life channel. Here, each story is a new adventure, and we are always ready to surprise you. Also, leave your comment on what you thought of the story and suggestions for future narratives. See you next time.